So for me, hope is about how do we get, it's a vision for something in our future. So it's future orientation. And then how do we fuel it with positive feelings and inspired actions? So, and a lot of the hope researchers, it's all about self-efficacy. So it's not just a wish, which is often how we use the word hope, but it's action. So it's what we want and knowing how to get there, taking action to get there.
You're tuned in to Compassionate Las Vegas, the podcast, where compassion inspires action. Together, we're building a world centered in understanding, empathy, and courageous action, starting right here in the heart of Southern Nevada. We're taking the principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you to heart. Now, let's welcome a man committed to fostering compassion in every corner of our city, a beacon of compassion in Las Vegas, your host, Will Rucker.
Welcome to Compassionate Las Vegas, the podcast. I'm your host, and I am so excited for today's program. There are so many reasons why you need to tell everyone you know right now to tune in to Compassionate Las Vegas, because they are going to be inspired, they are going to be motivated, and they are going to be filled with hope. Yes, that's my super cheesy segue to introduce our very special guest, Kathryn Goetzke. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Will. It's so great to be here and so good to see you.
Likewise, I am so glad you had time to fit us in because you are super busy. You are doing some amazing things in this world, and I just can't wait to dive into it.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I know I'm excited to be here, and it was part of Compassionate Las Vegas, and it was a really meaningful part of my time in Nevada and my work that I'm doing. And it's so important for my work. So it's really great to be here talking with you more.
You are a fellow. What year were you part of the program?
It was during COVID. 20.
Right.
Yes. 22, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I know.
That's interesting time frame in life, right?
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But
with that in mind, I just want to set a foundation for our conversation today. And I do this with every guest, and it's asking about the subject of compassion. So I want to hear from you what compassion means to you and really how you came about that understanding.
Yeah, compassion. What does compassion mean to me? It means kind of a proactive kindness towards self and towards other people. It's empathy in action, I would kind of say. And I've learned so much from Gard Jameson really about compassion, and it's in the work that we do around hope and we some of what we teach in hope. And I also know Jim Doty, who is at Stanford, who does a lot of work in compassion. So compassion to me is really about kindness in action. And, I think embraced with empathy, so having empathy and then acting on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love all of that, especially what you started with as proactive kindness. And that's the first time I've heard that particular phrasing. And I really, really like that.
Thank you. Yeah. Compassion has been a big part of my life and self-compassion too. We often think about compassion for others and with others and we forget about ourselves. And yet it's so important to be compassionate with ourselves as we go through this kind of human journey that we're on.
Absolutely. And your journey has truly been a journey. It's been some very high highs and some very low lows, which just kind of from the outside looking in is why I think hope has become your signature trademark here. So share just high level of your background and what brought you to hope.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thanks for the question. So high highs and low lows for sure, but I think we don't learn unless we have those contrasting experiences, really. So it's been an important part of my journey. And So I grew up in Chicago, and when I was 18, I lost my dad to suicide. I was super close with my dad, and he was a banker and businessman, and I learned so much from him, and I really thought he was always going to be a part of my life. And so when I lost him as a freshman in college, it was super devastating and really hard on me, and led me down my own spiral. And I had my own suicide attempt in my 20s. Didn't tell another soul for maybe 10 years because of the shame I had around it. And I had never thought that I would attempt to take my own life because of my experience with losing my dad and knowing how that affected other people. So it gave me a really deep insight into suicide and a strong desire to do something, to really understand, to figure out the root cause of suicide. Because I knew that if I wanted to save my own life, I had to understand what caused it and how I was going to create something different for myself and not follow in my dad's footsteps. So I worked for a number of companies and businesses and had experience in marketing and research and branding and new products and sales. And I eventually launched my own brand about 20 years ago, which is hard to even believe.
Wow. Yeah.
The mood light that we mentioned. And I wanted to do a cause marketing campaign for mental health at the time. And I found the branding around mental health to be super depressing. And so I ended up starting my own brand and nonprofit at that time, and was focused initially on teaching other nonprofits how to talk about mental health in a positive way, how to change stigma through, more positive imagery, getting leaders and celebrities talking about their mental health, talking about solutions as opposed to problems. And, at the time, less than 25% of people with depression and anxiety globally were getting treatments, and it's very treatable. So, again, I saw it as really a negative brand. And then it was about 10 years ago that I was in a suicide prevention talk, and they were talking about prevention in terms of restricting access to means. So methods to lock up guns and pesticides. Pesticides are a big problem in a lot of countries in the farming community. And then 800 numbers, and which are very important. When you're in a crisis, it's important to have, to do those things. And yet I knew for myself, and I knew for my dad, that would never have prevented my suicide, wouldn't have prevented his. And so really figuring out what causes it, and getting to that root cause. And across all of the literature, I'm grateful I've learned from the most brilliant minds in the world, but across all the literature, hopelessness is the single consistent predictor of suicide. And, I thought I was going to have a big problem because it was going to be so many things, and it was going to be very complicated. And it was, so the solution was complicated. But to me, that hopelessness was the consistent thing across all of the studies. I thought, well, if I can figure out what hopelessness is, deconstruct hopelessness, and then figure out how to get to hope, I can save myself. And I can teach other people how to prevent their own suicide. And that I set out on a mission to kind of figure out how to do that.
Yeah, wow. I mean, so much to unpack there. The pesticide piece, I really hadn't considered. So that's something. I'm also not in farming, so not
Yeah.
terribly, close. And that's something really to think about. There are so many different ways. Also, the idea of mental health. I want to talk a little bit about stigma, but when we talk about mental health, it's, to me, code for mental illness. We never say, oh, physical health. Someone has a physical health issue happening,
I know.
so just kind of curious your thoughts on that. But even before we get into any of that, hope, it seems like a word we probably all have a definition for, but I want to make sure we understand what you mean by hope.
Yes. Great question, because that is one of the most misused words in the human language, I would say. But I come at it from a scientific standpoint. And my definition arose from what hopelessness is. So when I looked at hopelessness, it's both emotional despair. You feel horrible And then it's motivational helplessness. So there's a sense of powerlessness that I can do anything about that. And it makes sense. So we know hopelessness predicts not just suicide, but also violence. So when we feel horrible and powerless, that's what that leads to, which again, it makes sense. So for me, hope is about how do we get, it's a vision for something in our future. So it's future orientation. And then how do we fuel it with positive feelings and inspired actions? So, and a lot of the hope researchers, it's all about self-efficacy. So it's not just a wish, which is often how we use the word hope, but it's action. So it's what we want and knowing how to get there, taking action to get there. So yeah, it's a super powerful word when it's used in that way. And if you hope for something, you can't just wish for it. You have to learn how to take action towards it. And so that's really in essence what we teach with hope. How do you get
Yeah,
from despair to positive feelings, and how do you get from helplessness to inspired action?
absolutely. Because I think some of the question I know when I'm even thinking about how to frame this episode, it's going to be, well, how do you teach hope? But I love that you say
I
hope
know.
is not a wish. There's some action, there's some science behind that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And with that in mind, Las Vegas is becoming
Yeah.
hopeful Las Vegas. So
Yeah.
talk to us about that. I'm so excited. I cannot wait.
I know. I'm so excited too. And thanks to Gar Jameson and the city of Nevada, Councilman Brian. I mean, Knudsen, it's been just such a pleasure to work with everyone there. So, yeah, so we have all these programs. I've been studying hope around the world. And, 10 years ago, I said, can you teach hope? They were measuring hope. So there's a hope scale. It's 8 questions. Everyone, and the children's one is 6 questions. I believe everyone should take the scale. I mean, it will tell you, they've done all these studies on outcomes. So how long you live, how quickly you recover from disease, how well you do in sports, more so than your abilities, all of these great things. If you graduate from school, if you stay in your job. So they've measured hope. So I've been able to show that you can actually teach hope. And as we increase someone's hope, anxiety and depression decrease. So I've created programming and studied it around the world. We have a Hopeful Minds overview, which is 3 lessons, kind of the what, why, and how of hope skills that educators, police are teaching these in after school programs. Places of worship can bring it to their places of worship. You can use these programs anywhere that go through the what, why, and how of hope with workbooks for kids. We also have a parent's guide for how do you start using hope language at home. We have a new teen guide. So, and we're working with Hope Means Nevada on it. Gotta give a shout out to the amazing Hope Means Nevada that does such great work with teens. But it's teaching these skills, empowering youth, and really all of us with skills for how to activate hope in our life. We've created, I'm CEO of the Shine Hope Company because I created a mnemonic to help us remember the 5 keys to hope and the 5 things we must be practicing if we want to be hopeful. The first one is stress skills. So that's the H. So it's how to identify and manage our stress response so that we're not reacting to everything that happens to us, but we're being really proactive about our stress response. If you can take away one thing from this conversation, we have a 90-second physiological response when we're triggered by something in our environment. So someone says something to us that hurts us or makes us angry, or we have this flooding of chemicals in our body, these, norepinephrine and adrenaline and cortisol, and we lose our ability to think clearly and to problem solve and collaborate. So we're in, our fight or flight response. And it takes 90 seconds for those hormones to cycle through our body before we get back to a place of kind of equilibrium. And that is why we make so many horrible decisions in that 90 seconds. So if we can learn how to control that stress response and we use stress skills to do that, that is critical to our ability to hope. That's why, you can see hopelessness leads to addiction, violence. Those things are all, those decisions are all made in less than 30 seconds. And that's why learning how to control that stress response is so critical to our ability to hope.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's powerful right there.
Every kid, like if we could just teach, and especially kids, like kids, when they learn this and then they start, we teach the kids our downstairs brain and our upstairs brain, right? And if your brother's in your downstairs brain, like give him space, back off, don't further engage with him, because we can often like just escalate that downstairs brain. And that's why things can escalate so quickly. And that's why during COVID, when all of our stress hormones were elevated, because there was so much uncertainty, we were all so much more reactive, so much more quickly. And so learning about the stress response and, to me, the biology of the stress response, when you're in despair, violence can feel good because you get endorphins when you're violent. So it's that for our kids, it's a smart decision to feel better, but it's not a healthy decision. It's not going to be healthy for you in the long term. It's not going to make you feel good in the long term. And it can land you in jail and all of these things. But teaching these kids these concepts is so important because we often shame and blame right now. And what we want to be doing is empowering those kids with information and giving them tools to start to make better decisions and choices for themselves.
Absolutely. I
So
want to get to the HIN and E,
I
and
know.
I want to talk about that for just a second. What you just mentioned with
Yeah.
consequences, because
Yeah.
we do a lot of work promoting restorative practices, and
Yeah.
some of the pushback is, well, people have to be held accountable, and there's this idea that if you just quote unquote let someone off the hook, if there's no punishment, no punitive result, then the behavior continues. And even what I'm hearing in your the stress response, is that that's just not scientifically sound.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like we're all guilty until we start teaching these kids these skills. I mean, we're not going to have a better society until we're educated on this. My dad didn't know how to manage a stress response. Anger was an outcome of that. I don't blame my dad. I blame our society for not learning how to teach each other about this and start practicing these skills in a way that's not stigmatizing and shaming, but in a way that's supportive and helpful. I love restorative justice. I think it's such important work.
And I think even that stress response it almost may be like a feedback loop with stigma, because
Yeah,
people feel as though, oh my gosh, I made this mistake. So now I don't even want to talk about dealing with it anymore.
absolutely. And you think of all the shame that piles up on the shame, and then, just the punitive approach we take right now is it's such an unhealthy and unhelpful model in terms of healing us all and healing the underlying and fundamental problem.
Absolutely.
And
And
yeah,
healing's a
so
great word to get us back on track for H.
healing happiness habits. So, when we're stressed, we often stop doing the things that are healthy for us. And happiness habits release those endorphins and dopamine. And, smiling can release them. And if you're going through a tragedy, the last thing you want to really do is smile. And that's why, like, intentional kindness, being intentional about our happiness habits, even when we're going through challenging times, is so important. Um, I'll go quickly. So inspired actions is the I, and that's really about goal setting. How do we set goals? What are different types of goals to set? Stretch goals versus SMART goals. How to overcome obstacles when we need to re-goal. I mean, what you think about in life, if you have a big challenge, say you want to be a star athlete and you have a major injury and you can't continue, that of course that's going to drive up your hopelessness. And how do you manage that in a way that's healthy? And so re-goaling is a really important part of that. The N is nourishing networks. So how to cultivate strong networks, bi-directional, who's in your circle of influence. Compassion is a part of this. We talk about things like compassion and kindness. And then the science behind these things. There's a lot of science about how compassion helps us live healthier and longer and more engaged and to do better in school and things like that. And then eliminating challenges, which are thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to move towards what we hope for. So if we ruminate a lot, if we worry about the future, if we try to control things outside of our control, if we internalize failure, these are things that we do that will stop our ability to hope. So it's learning all of these things and teaching them as skills, and then practicing together, learning how to incorporate them into our lives. so that we can move towards what we hope for in life. And we have a set of competencies that help us kind of do that.
Oh, shine hope.
Shine hope. That's
I
right.
love it. I just, this is a great way to just I may watch this episode every day just to feel good because it's such an amazing thing that's happening. So tell me what a hopeful city looks like. What can people expect now that Las Vegas is becoming a hopeful city?
Yes, that's a great question. So, what I do is I provide all of the resources available. So, we're creating a Las Vegas landing page on the Hopeful Cities site. So, hopefulcities.org. You can look at Las Vegas, and then all of these resources will be available to download. You can download the Shine Hope infographic, which has hyperlinks out to all of the skills we use and the science behind why each of these are important and how they'll affect your life and the lives of others. And then we have the parents guide, we have the curriculums, we have the teen hope guide. So if you have teens at home and you want them to start working on their hope skills, our teen program is peer to peer, but it's so that anyone can use these programs and start activating hope in their life. I often say I can teach you how to hope, but I can't make you hopeful. I think people's hope is up to them. It's up to if it's important to you, if it's important for those you love. If you struggle with anxiety or depression, it's hopelessness is going to be your primary symptom of depression, a key symptom of anxiety. So learning how to hope is going to be really important. And yet, it's something that anyone can learn how to do at any age. And so that's really what it's about. We use the sunflower as the global symbol for hope. So we're encouraging murals, we're encouraging sunflower gardens, we're encouraging Shine Hope signs. We have workplace posters so you can start talking about hope in the workplace. We have a hope scale so you can actually go and measure how hopeful you are. But the idea is to start the conversation around hope. And, you talked about how hope was part of your campaign. And hope is so misunderstood, and yet it's so critical for everything in life. But the challenge with hope is a lot of people think of it as a wish, and it's not a wish. It's actually something that's very, very important for you in life, and really your health care, your health outcomes. All of these are predicted by how hopeful you are. So the idea is to get the Las Vegas community access to all of these programs and skills, and then for you all to start utilizing them, sharing them, practicing together, and all kind of collectively working on your hope.
Awesome. So I want to play a quick game as we come down to our last couple minutes together.
Yes.
And it's called Build That Billboard.
Okay.
All right. So
Nice.
everything has to fit on a billboard. I'm going to give you kind of the topic and you're going to tell me what's on that billboard. So let's
Okay.
make the first one pretty easy.
Okay.
You get a billboard to talk about hope. What does it say?
Okay. Hope is teachable.
Oh, all right. I like that.
Or keep
Love.
shining. Keep shining.
That reminds me of the That's What Friends Are For song. Keep smiling, keep
Ah,
shining,
that's
knowing you can
right.
always count on me.
Yeah.
That'd be a
I
good one for
love
you.
that. I like it. I know. I like it. Yeah.
All right. What's your billboard about love say?
Ah, love, forgiveness, or it just has like a heart. Um, I know. I don't know. Love for me is such a feeling. It's hard to like put that on a billboard. Be a big heart.
The headline reads, What the World Needs Now Is. And what are you putting under that?
Love, compassion, and hope.
I'm going to pause the game just because I love that you put those three together. I think that compassion is really the link of love and hope. And it's that trinity that, like they say, the vocal trinity, Mariah, Celine, and Whitney. That's kind of the trinity of how the world can just be amazing, is that love, hope, and compassion. So, all right, this is the last one.
Okay.
Kathryn Goetzke.
Chief Hope Officer.
Okay, I'm gonna frame it a little different. Who is Kathryn Goetzke?
Who is I mean, I think I'm a purveyor of hope.
Perfect. That is absolutely perfect. So tell us again how folks can get in contact with the Shine Hope Company, how they can get engaged in Hopeful Las Vegas, and how they can connect with you if they want more information.
Awesome. So you can go to the shinehopecompany.com if you want to check out our work, but definitely go to the Hopeful Cities, the Las Vegas page, and please share these resources. Start using these resources in the community. I mean, these are free skills and tools that you can use to start activating hope in your life today, in the lives of others. We have the CDC put out a report 57% of teen girls identify with persistent hopelessness. I have to repeat that 57% of our teen girls are identifying with persistent hopelessness. And hopelessness is learned. So we are teaching our children to be hopeless. And I think this is the greatest tragedy of our time. And to me, we have got to empower our youth and teens. If you're listening, it's up to you. I mean, empower each other. We're teaching you this. You have got to, I think we need a teen revolt around hope because teens have so much to teach us about hope. And so for me, getting these programs into the hands of teens so they can start teaching each other and teaching us too how to better live. Please go to hopefulcities.org and check out these resources and use them. Yeah.
Right. Well, Kathryn, thank you so very much. This has been Compassionate Las Vegas, the podcast. I'm Will Rucker. And as I always remind you, you are not just a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. And what you do matters. So live compassionately and shine hope. We'll see you next time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.